Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Reading Corner, and happy October 1st. October is known as Disability Awareness Month in the United States, and in honor of that, I'm going to be sharing with you all of my favorite books relating to disability. A disclaimer before we start, this video is going to sound more scripted than usual because this topic is important to me, and so I want to make sure that I'm doing these books justice by talking about them clearly and accurately. The first one is Out of My Mind by Sharon M. Draper. I read this book in 2021, therefore I had to look up the synopsis for this book because all I remember was that it was a book about a girl with cerebral palsy and that the representation was good. The synopsis for this book, according to Goodreads, is Melody is not like other people. She cannot walk or talk, but she has a photographic memory. She can remember every detail of everything she's ever experienced. She's smarter than most of the adults who try to diagnose her, and smarter than her classmates in her integrated classroom. The very same classmates who dismiss her as mentally challenged because she cannot tell them otherwise. But Melody refuses to be defined by cerebral palsy. She's determined to let everyone know it. Somehow. I also remembered that she has what's called synesthesia, which means that she's able to hear colors or visualize flavors when music is played. To me, this book was about overcoming obstacles and challenges that other people put in your way. Despite what her classmates and teachers think of her, Melody doesn't let her disability stop her from doing the things she wants to do. For example, she joins a trivia team despite the fact that she can't talk unless she uses this device called a Medi-Talker, which allows her to put in either letters or words. People doubted that she would be able to use it because the cerebral palsy causes her to have a hard time doing anything with her hands. But this book also shows, but Mrs. V, her neighbor, believed that she could do it, and so she taught her how to use it. And through that, this book shows the importance of people who believe in you and want to help you. And in my opinion, Mrs. V helped her because she didn't want Melody to think that she was defined by her disability. I also enjoyed this book because of the advocacy representation. Her mother advocates for her to be in the integrated classroom after she realizes that her special education classroom isn't teaching her anything and she's not gaining any skills or knowledge there. Honestly, I forgot how much I liked this book until I was going through the synopsis and remembering the details for this video. And now, because of this video, I just want to go reread it. So if you want a story about overcoming obstacles and not letting what other people think define you, which is a good lesson for all of us, regardless of whether we have a disability or not, then definitely go check this out. Another book related to disability that I read in 4th grade and then reread last year is Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Sorry if I butchered that. I loved this book in 4th grade because it accurately captured my thoughts and feelings that I had when I was Augie's age and in elementary school about having a disability. And a lot of things that happened to Augie happened to me when I was in elementary school, and I'm sure happened to a lot of kids who are in elementary school just because kids that age are so young and don't understand, what is and isn't appropriate
to say and do.
For example, at that age, kids think that the disability is contagious and that if they touch the person, they will get it too. And so to have a character go through that when I was going through it was so impactful to me and made me fall in love with the story at a very young age. And because kids at that age think that the disability is contagious, we also have a hard time making friends. And Augie went through that as well. He had a hard time making friends until Summer sat down with him at lunch. And a line that really stuck with me from the movie was when he asked his mom, "Will it always matter?" And she said, "I don't know." And I remember thinking that as a kid, that it would always matter, that I would always struggle to make friends because I had a disability and everyone would stare at me all the time. But that's not true. I see that now. But at that age, you think that that's all that's ever going to matter and that's all that people are going to see you for. And as much as I know it sucks right now, if you're at that age, just know that it gets better and that it's a psychological response in a way because it has been psychologically proven that kids that age look for what is different in any scenario they're in. And so when you have a disability, that's oftentimes going to be you. You're going to be the one that's different in that scenario. And kids' eyes at that age are drawn to what's different. It's kind of like where's Waldo or find the number that's different in this pattern. When I reread this book last year, I fell in love with it for a whole new reason. And yes, I still love it for what it represented in fourth grade and that it can be that for somebody else going through that at that age. But being older and I hope a little bit wiser, I enjoyed it because we get multiple perspectives throughout the book. And through that, we were able to see what it's like living with somebody who has a disability. And that is something that is not often addressed in books relating to disability. Oftentimes, books relating to disability have to do with the person themselves and don't address what it's like for the people around them. And that's something that's really important and something that I think should be brought up more because having a disability isn't just about you. Yes, you're the person going through it and you're going to be the one experiencing it on a daily basis, but it's also going to affect the people around you too. Reading Via's point of view and seeing how she feels like she can't complain about things because Augie struggles and has to go through so much more because of his disability, and that she feels like it's worse than her problems and so she can't complain, or how she gets mad when people stare regardless of how old they are, made me think about my own relationship with my siblings and how they might have felt when we were growing up because like Augie, I had a lot of doctor's appointments and things that I had to do because of my disability. And so my mom spent a lot of time with me because of that. And I also got stared at a lot. And so again, it made me think about how my siblings might have felt growing up when people stared at me. Bonus, this is also why I liked Benji the Bad Day in Me by Sally J. Plough, illustrated by Ken Min, because it focused on how the main character's brother having a disability affects him. So if you want two books that don't just focus on the person with the disability, but those around them too, check these two out. Okay, I'm going to sound like a broken record when I talk about this next book because I brought it up multiple times on this channel through the rating system video, the song association video, and the favorite quotes and scenes video. But Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan is a fantastic book, in my opinion, that represents disability well. It breaks down a stereotype that is often assigned to people with disabilities, and that's that we can't have a job. And it shows and talks about it because Bree, his girlfriend, has a conversation with him about the fact that people with disabilities can actually have a job. And then he goes and gets a job later in the story. The author also talks about issues often discussed and faced within the disability community. For example, how people with disabilities are sometimes made to feel like projects or something to be fixed. In the story, Bree tries to help Archer reintegrate into society after he has been staying on his property and only going out for the necessities because he's had a few bad experiences when he goes into town with people staring at him. And because she tries so hard to help him reintegrate into society, he tells her that he feels as if he is a project to her and that she's trying to fix him and that he's willing to work on reintegrating into society, but he wants to do it on his own time and not be forced to. She then acknowledges that that happened by mistake and she wasn't doing it on purpose and apologizes for the way that she made him feel. The next one is how people sometimes with disabilities feel isolated or aren't a person because people stare at them or ignore them. In the story, Bree helps Archer reintegrate into society after he has been living off his property and only going into town for necessities. Because when he goes into town, people don't talk to him, they stare at him, and he feels really embarrassed and really awkward. And so he just goes into town for the necessities and then goes back to his property and lives there by himself. The last one, and the most important one in my opinion, is how sometimes people with disabilities feel like a burden, whether that be because someone told them they were. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people who've said that they've been told that before, or sometimes when you feel like there are a lot of things you need in order to be a quote-unquote normal person, it can feel like you're a burden.
If you want a book that addresses many of the stereotypes and issues that people in the disability community face, then definitely check this one out.
The second to last book that I want to mention is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Now, you may be sitting here watching this and going, what? Violet has a disability? She does. It's briefly mentioned in the story, so much so that if you don't know what the disability looks like or what the symptoms are, you don't know. I caught it because Violet mentioned how she was really flexible, but that things popped out of place easily. And it was confirmed in the acknowledgments and then later in several interviews, specifically one with Health, that Violet has EDS or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I'll link the article down below because it does a good job of explaining what it is, and also because Rebecca talks about why she thinks disability representation is important, and that's why we're here today. So everything she said in this interview is why I love this book in terms of disability representation. Firstly, and I talked about this in my rating system video, but there are not a lot of books that talk about invisible disabilities or disabilities that aren't visually obvious, like cerebral palsy or blindness. So to have that representation for invisible disabilities like EDS is so cool, crucial, because everybody with disabilities, whether visible or not, deserve to be represented in literature or in real life. Something else that I loved about the representation and something I hadn't thought about until I read the article is how Violet has a hard time accepting accommodations. Taran uses his powers to keep her seated, and then later in the novel, he ends up wearing a saddle because he realizes that that's the only way she's going to be able to stay seated in flight. And Violet has a hard time accepting both of these things, more so Taran using his powers to keep her seated rather than the saddle. And she struggles to accept these accommodations because she wants to prove she can do this just like everybody else. And I love seeing this refusal to help because it's something that people with disabilities struggle with. How can we be like everybody else while still having accommodations that allow us to be like everybody else?
If that makes sense.
The last thing that I loved about this book in terms of disability representation is how it wasn't obvious. And by that, I mean, it wasn't the main thing about the character. The main thing about the character was that she was a dragon rider trying to make it through the war college. That was her main focus. And her disability was just a part of her. And because Violet's disability wasn't the main plot, instead of how do we overcome the obstacles presented to us by our disability, the question then became, how do I live with a disability? And we saw that through Violet realizing, crap, I'm not going to be able to do these challenges without some modifications. Now, do I recommend going out and finding some oranges because you know your opponent is allergic to oranges? No, but she was able to adapt to the situation around her and figure out how to live with her disability instead of overcome it. Because oftentimes the word overcome implies that we deal with the problem once and for all. And that's not how disability works. Oftentimes, if you have a problem, you're going to address the problem, find a solution, and then readdress the problem and find a different solution couple months, a couple years down the line, because you're adapting to a change in your body or a change in your surroundings. Therefore, you're learning to live with your disability. You're not overcoming it, you're living with it. So if you're looking for a book with magic, dragons, war, political intrigue, and some disability representation, then this book is just the book for you. The last book I want to talk about is Clan of the Cape Bear by Jane M. Aul. The Mogre, or the shaman of the clan, according to Fandom Wiki, Creeb, has a physical disability. According to Fandom Wiki, Creeb's right leg was crippled and smaller than the left. The right shoulder and upper arm were atrophied, and the shriveled arm had been amputated below the elbow. The powerful shoulder and arm and muscular leg of his fully developed left side made him appear lopsided. His huge cranium was larger than those of the rest of the clan, and the difficulty of his birth had caused the defect that crippled him for life. As a child, Creeb was attacked by a cave bear, which added to his deformity by blinding him in one eye, but was regarded as a blessing from the most highly revered and powerful spirit of the clan people. The left side of his face was hideously scarred, and his left eye was missing. The clan believed that if someone survives a cave bear attack, it means the person is now under the protection of Ursus and may claim the cave bear as their totem. In addition to the totem, they were assigned in early childhood by their clan Mogr. This book takes place in Neanderthal times, and so the main way that men provided for the clan was by hunting and providing food and protection. And because of the severe injuries that he has, that has left him disabled, Creed can't do that. And so he feels like a burden to the clan despite his high status. And because he couldn't hunt, he also felt like he was a burden to his sister because she had to take care of him. Because in the clan, that's how men took care of themselves as well as the clan, is by hunting, and he couldn't do that. Also, because he had the physical deformities, nobody wanted to be his mate, even though he had a high status. And the children, and I quote, none of the children of the clan had ever reached out to him. No adults reached out to him either. They avoided contact with him as though they might somehow catch his deformity by touching him. And so, like Archer's voice, we have the isolation going on again. And we also have the assumption from Wonder that if we talk to the person or touch them, that we will also get their disability, even though that is most certainly not how it works. This also shows that this isn't a new or recent problem that needs to be addressed. These are problems that have been happening for years. People with disabilities are thought of as less able, both physically and mentally. They are thought of as outcasts or burdens. We saw that with Out of My Mind. People in Melody's class and on her trivia team thought she wasn't going to be able to mentally keep up because of her physical disability. We also saw the outcast part with Out of My Mind, Wonder, Archer's Voice, and Clan the Cave Bear because people were afraid to talk to them because of their disability. And then we saw the burdens part with Archer's Voice and Clan the Cave Bear. And Clan of the Cave Bear takes place way, way before these books. And so to have this be a problem even back then shows that this isn't a new problem. And on that note, if you like historical fiction or want to learn more about Neanderthals, then check out Clan of the Cave Bear, which is part of the Earth's Children series by Jane M. All. Those were all the books I love that include fantastic disability representation in one way or another. I hope you enjoyed, and happy Disability Awareness Month. Until next time.